Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Camera Tuesday. In today's episode we're gonna talk about Blackmagic Design Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. So let's dive right into it. So first you have to understand what it is. Basically you can think of it as a bigger brother to Blackmagic 4K. So what are you getting for this quote-unquote big brother? Basically you're getting 6K raw and you can go up to 60 frames per second, but you have to understand that at that point it will crop top and bottom a little bit. So if you are okay with that kind of crop, awesome, it's a 60 frames per second camera. But if you want like full super 35 millimeters uncropped output, you can only go up to 50 frames per second. Now the sensor has been changed. It went from micro four third to super 35. So you can see micro four third to super 35. However, it does have more surface area and it's much more closer to cinema industry, because you have to understand super 35 is quote unquote de facto cinema industry. It is like what you will find in Red Epic, what you will find in RE, what you will find in basically Sony FS5 or things of that nature. So it is a quite stable known format for cinema industry. Not it does not mean like cinema never uses something bigger than that. If they are quoting IMAX system, they might use 65 millimeter. So you get the idea. Like super 35 is much more closer to like what you can say, hey, this is a proper cinema camera. So that's the major change. Now on top of that, okay, you change the sensor. How the heck you gonna attach things to it? How the heck you gonna mount lenses to it? So they are moving to Sony EF mount now, which is an awkward decision. I will explain it further, but you have to get the idea. So if you are thinking like, okay, I'm going from micro four third to quote unquote super 35, do not think that you're gonna get like a dramatically larger basically field of view or dramatically better low light performance, because this image should give you an idea, because this is still smaller than APS-C. Basically if you bought let's say Sony A6400 still has more surface area basically, and it has more depth of field and all that. So do not think like I'm gonna get magically low light performance, because full frame, it's huge. Full frame sensors are huge. Now because 6K is such a awkward frame rate and format that company does not support, basically Apple does not support ProRes for it. So you have to get basically DaVinci Resolve. Without that, the footage ingestion will become very difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. And people are saying like right now the codec is not well supported with Adobe Premiere system. So you have to wait. If you are like only relying on Premiere, you may have to wait for like getting a stable codec and all that. It may be solved. It may be solved by the time you get it. Like somebody might have patched it, but be mindful of that. 6K is only available in B raw format, basically Blackmagic raw format, and that format works well with DaVinci Resolve, and they are giving you full license, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But be aware of it, be thoroughly aware of that you do not have the luxury of ProRes. So that's what it is, basically taking the same body, exactly the same body, changing the sensor, going to from micro four third to super 35, little bit bigger, and changing the lens mount from micro four third to full basically Canon EF system. So then the question becomes, because the first thing that you're gonna compare it to is like Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So what if like you just bought it recently, because 4K just was released quite early on, but it was available in the beginning of 2019, and many people had issue with like they ordered it but it did not came, and it took time. Basically there was a lot of supply issue. So many of people are saying like they just got their camera, like hands-on camera experience, just like few months ago. So why the heck basically Blackmagic released this new camera? Now you have to understand, this is not a quote-unquote upgrade. I think this camera was also meant to be released side by side with that 4K system. However, because of the difficulty they had with their supply chain, they pushed the launch, because these two are literally copy-paste from one another. So I'm pretty sure they were like, yeah, we want to have 6K for some people who want to like go more into VFX, more into basically VFX is the majority of the thing that will benefit, or for common people will have 4K system, but because of supply chain and all that jazz, it was pushed. So then the question becomes, okay, let's say you haven't bought it and you're like, hey, should I buy 4K or should I buy 6K? Now you have to understand, 6K will give you few core advantage. Like you can say, okay, because I have 6K, because that's why I have this. The core advantage being stabilization. Basically if you are stabilizing in any software, whatever it may be, it generally crops in. The more it crops in, the better it gets. However, you are losing the resolution. Basically if you have 4K output and you're cropping in, you are having like let's say 3.5K, and your basically virtual frame is moving inside that. Now that reduces sharpness a little bit, not too much, little bit. But if you have 6K, you have more than enough room to move around and still have 100% output, like pixel per pixel matching, basically 1 to 1 pixel matching for 4K to 4K output, because you have 6K. So that is really helpful for people who do run and gun shooting, or they do not have the gimbals and rigs that are needed for stabilization. So that's quite a useful scenario. Second is VFX. Now, what do you mean by VFX? Basically, it does not mean like, your VFX will go from, okay, just some people making video to end game. Because you have to understand, if you see any what we call behind the scene bloopers and all that, there is so much tracking done into basically all the big budget movie. Those tracking makes them like possible to use, like Alexa and all that. And they don't have the magical camera which is like 16K and all that, because they can track it. Now when you are talking about low budget, you don't have the luxury of like creating a whole sound stage with a precisely controlled tracking system. So in those sort of scenario, having higher resolution helps. This was the another reason why red also pushes resolution so much. So VFX shots become easier because you can zoom in and like, okay, this is the object, this is the object border, and you can properly precisely isolate it. So in those sort of scenario, having a little bit more resolution is really helpful. But this is twice as more expensive. So if you're going from, let's say 1400 to you're going to upwards of like 2500, and people are saying it could reach as high as 2700 if you have included VACT and all that. So it is almost twice as more expensive. Now it's supposed to, quote unquote, it's supposed to be a bit better than low light, and there are footage out there, but you can only say it's like little bit better. It's not too much. Like heck, you can easily, if you are like you're skilled in the DaVinci Resolve, you can easily make footage look literally exactly the same. So it's not like whoa. Like you don't expect the sensor size increase is not that much where like, okay, your pixel size went from 1 micron to 10 micron. You don't have that luxury. So little bit better low light, little bit better field of view. Now this part is like the moment you open the Blackmagic page, you will see that's the first thing they are showing, better depth of field. Now again, bit better because the sensor size is a little bit better, and most of the advantage you are getting is you will get a ability to use direct f1.8 lenses, like proper full frame f1.8 lenses. Even with the crop of basically 1.5 is still better than many micro four thread system. So to get quote unquote that better field of view, you have to utilize speed booster and full frame lens. If you have speed booster plus full frame lens, then this will have higher field of view. So if you have already bought this very recently and you're like, hey, I rigged it up, I have battery system and all that, do not worry about 6K. 6K is not that better in terms of price to performance ratio. So, and don't be like, okay, I just got it, should I sell it? No. If you have 4K, it's more than good enough. And due to price to performance ratio, you would have the luxury of like, hey, buying extra kJs, extra battery is very important. And other than that, like you can buy basically Ninja 5K, Ninja 4K and all that. So you have to understand this. Against 4K, it really does not, it's not like, whoa, too much better. Like again, you may be like, hey, I already have a lot of Canon lenses. Awesome. I already want a lot of stabilization. Awesome. I want more resolution for VFX. Awesome. Anything other than that, yeah, you don't expect like, whoa, I'm gonna get magically ludicrously shallower depth of field. You're not gonna get it, and you can bypass that in your micro four third issue simply by putting a full frame lens with a speed booster. I have provided the video down below where you can actually see. So question becomes, should you buy it? Well, simple answer, no. Why? Because it's too expensive. Because whenever people were comparing Blackmagic 4K, the original one, even though it was not a quote unquote full ready, because many things were limiting, like video camera is supposed to have flip out screens. You have to have it. Like that's why almost all cinema I'm saying, even Blackmagic's own system have a flip out screen. Even with Sony FS system have a flip out screen. It is something that you must have for a cinema system, because you will not always have the luxury. If your camera is down on the ground, how the heck you gonna see it? And Blackmagic did not change that. So okay, that was acceptable if your budget was very tight and you can only buy something that is as cheap as $1,400. So at that price point, it was a killer system, because that's the first thing I can say to any film studio student who's like, hey, do you really want to understand how cinematography is done? Buy this camera, actually experience what is the raw pipeline, learn it, figure it out. That's awesome, and you will get a full software license, which is ultra awesome. So in those sort of scenario, priceless. Here it's not so much, simply because it's a weird hybrid. Now that weird hybrid, okay, 4K is also a weird hybrid because it looks like a hybrid camera, basically your photo camera, but it's not a photo camera. You can't capture good quality photo with this. I'm like okay quality, but not too good, and autofocus, God help you with that. So it's a very weird system. That's not an issue because there was nothing comparing at it, competing at it at that low of a price. Here there are so many things competing at it, because you have to understand, right now you can buy Sony system, Nikon system, Canon system, and they all will outperform this simply because they, at that price range, they can give you full frame. The issues of 30-minute recording limit, that has also been solved with many systems and all that. So at this point in time, if you are spending like, let's say $2,000 plus, you can buy, let's say, Nikon and buy Ninja 5 and get the 10-bit output. You can have Sony Ninja 5 output, and you will have proper high quality image output. So in this sort of scenario, these tool sets are much more versatile. It's something like you take it out, shoot, done, go home. And heck, both of them have better battery life. Like literally they have better battery life. That is the one thing, like that is why I think like most of the cameras are supposed to be released at the same time. Due to their supply chain issue, they are like, yeah, let's release one by one. Because it's not an upgrade, it's just like, okay, we have one option with this sensor and this lens mount, we have another sensor with this lens and this mount. So at this point, as in like above 2000, I can easily say, hey, just buy a Sony system, or hey, buy Nikon system if you want that raw footage that badly. You can get 10-bit output from Nikon, you cannot get 10-bit output from Sony. You can do that with Canon, some models. So you have those advantages. Flat out, these camera setup will flat out kick butt of basically Blackmagic system, because autofocus, because image stabilization, because full frame sensor, because these have much better low light performance that you cannot even begin to imagine. The low light performance difference between these two is upwards of 1.7x. So that is why, like at this price point, at $1,300, there is nothing. Like you can't even think about it. Like Panasonic GH5 is also more expensive than that. But at 2,300, yeah, you can get a lot of things. So that is why, like in terms of versatility, basically from YouTube to lightweight movie shootings and all that, and flat out, it's not something that I can tangibly recommend. Now, lens mount option was also awkward for many people. Many people like, why the heck you are giving a lens mount which is full frame and DSLR system? Because that means they cannot put adapter. Even though your sensor is so small and you have the luxury of putting a speed booster, you cannot physically put it. So there are people who are like building a lens mount right now that will go inside the sensor, basically camera body itself. So you can have that ability to use full frame Canon full frame lenses on a cropped system. Again, extra steps that should not have been there. That should not have been, because they know like people use speed boosters, and speed boosters are becoming quite successful, and you can get quite high quality speed booster for $400. So people are using that. It's just like they made it so much difficult, because lens mount is like the flange distance is so huge. It's quite awkward. Like this whole camera is very weird hybrid. The cost is no longer like competitive, because if you just want something, hey, I just want to say I'm a simple guy, I want to do simple things, and I want a simple video camera, both of these will outperform anything out there, Blackmagic wise. Now again, Blackmagic 4K will beat it out, because the price range is so low that you can afford to buy, like let's say if you want a luxury of like having a monitor wherever you want to, you can buy a like Ninja V, or you can buy a extra battery setup, because the battery life is only 40 minutes. This puppy can go up to 2 hours of continuous recording. 2 hours of continuous recording. So all these things considered, because of the price, because of the the awkward nature of it, because of the awkward lens mount, it's not something that is very easy to recommend. 4K, quite good for starter camera, quite good for somebody who's like trying to learn what the hell people mean when they talk about color correction, because there is no way of somebody showing it to you on YouTube. You have to see with your own eyes. Otherwise you will not understand it. Like somebody says, oh, skin tone, what does that mean? Like what does that mean? Because you haven't seen the person in face to face. You do not know is their skin supposed to be red or is they supposed to be orange, unless you see it by yourself. So for those sort of people who are students who are becoming, hey, let's figure it out how color correction works, that is an awesome tool. Not only you are getting an awesome camera, not only you're getting a camera that can do proper raw, not only you're getting a full-fledged software license, you also have the luxury of putting whatever lens you want. You can put Canon lens, you can put Sony lens, you can put whatever you want. Here it's not so cut and dry. Here this is very awkward. Now again, if you're like, hey, I need to have 6K for some reason, okay, buy it. Again, your money, your decision. And you're like, hey, I'm gonna use VFX, I use VFX a lot, 4K is not enough for me. Again, what are you doing? But again, I can understand that, but do understand this is not as of a killer camera as 4K was. 4K was like, Okay, for a student this is the best thing. Like this is what they're supposed to buy. Like, you know, okay, I'm like about to complete my whole cinema graduation, this is the first camera I'm gonna buy. It was like that. This, not so much. So this was my presentation on Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K. I hope you liked it, learn from it. In that case, please click the like button. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I would urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me your extra disappointment. And please leave a comment because I reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.